Welcome to the VET S.O.S podcast. Remember, don't drown the sea of transition. Grab the VET S.O.S Lifeline. Our Wounded Warrior Project journey continues again today with an exciting program. Today, we're sitting down with Joey Carzoli, physical health and wellness coach at Wounded Warrior Project. Fresh off a 72-hour Minecraft bender. How you doing today, Keith?
I'm doing great, Sean. And I would just like to point out that in 72 hours, I built an entire civilization from scratch. I established a functioning economy and defeated a dragon. And meanwhile, you can't even figure out how to work the mute button on your Zoom. So that's just,
Now,
knock me, man. Gaming builds skills, man. Skills, real skills.
How much
Jackie
time
were
did
here,
you
you'd back me
spend
up.
Googling that or asking other people about that? Because I have a feeling that you didn't know any of that prior to you doing the research.
I have played Minecraft with my kids when they were younger. Thank you very much.
Okay. You stick to that story. We talked about earlier being honest on this show, but you want to choose not to
I
be.
had played
Okay.
I built a tunnel from like one end of the map to the other one time, all underground. Like it took me I actually rubber banded. I took the controller and like stuck it up in the up position so my character would go forward while it was digging, and I put a rubber band around the controller and just let it run for like 2 hours.
Nice.
I know how to Minecraft.
Working smarter.
I know. I totally lost all the audience too. They're like, "What the hell is going on?"
You lost me.
You tell me about being honest. I'm being honest.
Yeah, I do not game. That is one thing I don't. I am familiar with my son playing Minecraft, but that's the extent of it. And I watched the movie, so that there you go. There's all my knowledge.
So I haven't even done that.
It was all right. All right, so before Joey just logs off, he's like, I don't know what we're doing here. We'll jump into his intro. Joey's a Jacksonville native who received his bachelor's in exercise science from Florida State University, his master's in exercise science and health promotion from Florida Atlantic University, and his PhD in neurophysiology from the University of Colorado Boulder. He is a physical health and wellness coach for Wounded Warrior Project and enjoys breaking down complex health topics for practical implementation to improve well-being. That's quite the journey there, Joey. How you doing today?
Great, man. Excited to be here. And yeah, fun journey. But excited where it's led for sure.
So out of curiosity, did you not just want to finish the cycle and go to University of Florida and get your doctorate? I mean, why'd you leave the state for the doctorate?
Well, going to University of Florida would have been a terrible decision because it's the University of Florida. But ultimately, when it came to choosing, where I was able to do my doctorate, the process was I emailed probably 50 different potential professors across maybe 40 different universities who just had research in a lab that piqued my interest. Maybe about half of those responded. Maybe about of those 20 that responded, maybe, or 25 that responded, maybe like 5 said, "Hey, maybe we could work together." The rest were, kind of like, "Hey, you have like no overlap with our field. Why did you even think you could come here?" And that hurt. But for those 5 that were somewhat interested, ultimately took some visits to them, and something that two mentors of mine in my master's program both mentioned to me. I asked them independently, like, what's the most important thing I should look for when it comes to kind of picking a PhD program? They both separately said, make sure you're working with good people. And that really resonated with me. And ultimately, who I ended up working with at the University of Colorado Boulder and the lab culture there, when I visited, I was like, I'm absolutely checking that box. And the research is pretty awesome too. So that's ultimately what culminated into going out to beautiful Colorado. And I know you guys have been, but it's University of Colorado Boulder's campus is phenomenal. I love the mountains, love changing seasons. And then ultimately we ended up moving back to Jacksonville, where my wife and I are both from, where we just have summer and January as our season. So ultimately glad to be back in Florida, though, closer to family, and then at Wounded Warrior Project's headquarters.
Look at that, Keith.
So it wasn't Deion Sanders that drew you out there?
No, man. He and I both have the Florida State link. And right as I was finishing up, he was coming in. So, when I heard they were hiring him, I was pretty pumped. And then I got a little bummed that it was like, basically we were high-fiving, passing each other on our way out of the state of Colorado. So he got there right as I left. So yeah, never got to hop on the Deion train.
I don't want to glance over the fact that, it started kind of as like a joke when I asked the question, and he dropped some serious knowledge on us about, having good teammates and, the
Right?
importance of that in what you do. And I think that applies to everything. If you work for a great team, the work is just, it's not that bad, right? No matter what you do, if the team is good, it takes a lot of the sting out of what you may be doing if you don't like the specific field. But, no, that's fantastic. And I also think the other key point that you brought up there was the research part of it, where, you reached out to 40 different programs. You did some serious research to make yourself successful, set yourself up for success, and find something that truly meant something to you. And, I think we can all learn a lesson from that as well. So, kudos to you on that, and fantastic journey. And, I'll keep my Florida State jokes to myself, because the Georgia ones earlier didn't go well. So,
Yeah.
so I actually enlisted out of Tallahassee. I was working in the mall there in Tallahassee back in the day. So, but yeah, that's I'm not a Florida State fan. I'll be the first to admit that. I'm not a Florida fan either. So
Yeah, funny man.
I
Actually,
live in Jacksonville, and I'm a Tennessee fan. So
yeah, University of Georgia was actually one of the final like two places I was kind of looking at. Is there or Colorado? And one thing that was fun was the professor I was speaking with at Georgia, great guy, and that was another thing. I was like, man, awesome, definitely be working with good people here. Would have been a wonderful opportunity. And when that professor actually found out I was going to be working with the professor I ended up working out with in Colorado, he was like, "Oh, awesome! That's great." Like he was really excited for me, which was reassuring, and I thought really cool that he was just even more encouraging of the
that's awesome.
ultimate decision. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, man, I love hearing that. That's fantastic. And we have an education show, and a lot of the stories we hear from, the people working in the veteran centers and stuff like that is very similar to that, where, you know, obviously they want you to go to the school, but at the same time they want what's best for you.
Mhm.
And, they'll help you find that right answer, even if it's a different school. So, love hearing that other people in academia are doing that. So we've gotten way off topic. Let's bring it back to, before we get into the actual work you're doing with Wounded Warrior Project. What led you to working with veterans? Like, how did that come about?
Sure. When I was in high school, one of my older sisters started working for Wounded Warrior Project, and so she's been with Wounded Warrior Project for maybe 14, 15 years now. And she's always been kind of on the fundraising side of the organization. So even when I was an undergrad, kind of like participated in and facilitated a few like fundraising efforts for Wounded Warrior Project. And she always just constantly loved her entire experience, still does working with Wounded Warrior Project. It's a great organization. And and then when I moved back to Jacksonville, she kind of put this opportunity on my radar, piqued my interest, looked into it, and yeah, it's been just super fun to get involved in and help out how I can.
That's fantastic.
Funny enough, man, when I came in for so there's one warrior registered with us. His name's Brian Wagner, and he spoke to my high school football team back in the day when we were
Hmm,
doing like a fundraising effort for Wounded Warrior Project. And so he spoke on behalf of, we call it WWP, and gave a really awesome speech to our team and stuff. And it was just great to meet him and get to know him and another warrior who was with him. And then decade and a half later, however long it was, when I came in to kind of like interview to see if I would ultimately be able to help out and everything. I was interviewing with Megan Wagner, and I was like, "You don't happen to be related to Brian Wagner, do you?" She's like, "Yeah, he's my husband." I was like, "Oh my gosh, he spoke to my high school football team back in the day. Like, got this job in the bag, you know." So that was a pretty sweet connection there. And yeah, so it's just been something it's been fun to have like involvement in different Wounded Warrior Project activities over the years, ultimately leading to like getting more heavily involved in it, helping out in the capacity I am now.
Wow.
and now he brings in the importance of networking, Keith.
Right. And I was just going to say
Yeah,
that.
sure.
Yeah. It's who you don't know what you know. And I want to get into the process, but you just popped in another question based on what you were just saying. So it seems like you were basically groomed almost from the beginning to be a part of WWP. Like it's just been a part of your life. Um, So like it was almost guaranteed in your future, but you've taught everything from neurophysiology of human movement to weight management and stress management at the university level. How did teaching college students prepare you, or not prepare you maybe, for sitting across the table from a combat veteran dealing with chronic pain, PTSD, and a body that doesn't work the way it used to?
Great question, man. I don't know that it really did prepare me
Okay.
for it, but I mean, at the end of the day, like whenever you're trying to, let's say, communicate some health topic, some physiologically focused intervention that could help somebody, what they really care about most, and I think what resonates with them most, is like, does the person communicating clearly care to help them? And so, like, that was kind of one of my concerns when I first started, working with Lunar Warrior Project, was like, hey, how will veterans, I'm always been a civilian, like, how are they going to really care to like hear what I have to say? Are they going to really care to, um, even just kind of sit across the table from me and hear what could help them from me, and ultimately it's like, as soon as I realize, like, you care, everyone cares, like whether it's a student, whether it's a veteran, or just any civilian, people who want to learn and who do want to better their lives one way or another, are attentive and receptive. And so, I'd say, yeah, the university level, there's its own unique challenges, and um, I'd say maybe more or less effective ways to go about it. But at the end of the day, like, educating is educating. And I think we have this bizarre idea that it's like you can only learn or be educated in a very formal academic setting. And it's like, that's, I think, one of the ways people can learn least. And it is really, it's the application that matters, regardless of what setting you're in.
Another knowledge bomb. Uh,
Right.
Joey's dropping them left and right here. I love it.
Appreciate it, man.
So what do
And
people?
I don't know if he's doing it
Go ahead.
intentionally.
Right? He spent a lot of time in the front leaning rest position. Sorry, I tie back to a previous episode, military joke, inside military joke. But
So check it out.
so what? How do people like? What can they expect? Like they sign up with Wounded Warrior. The triage care team. Okay, you need to go see Joy. Like what can somebody expect in their journey with you?
Totally. Yeah. So our physical health and wellness program at Wounded Warrior Project has a couple different services we offer. Our flagship service is just called the coaching program. And that is a 3-month commitment. It is kickstarted by Physical Health and Wellness Expo. I'm actually at one right now and just kind of stepped into a little side conference room at the hotel to do this with you guys. But we have usually about 20 or so warriors come out for a weekend, where we have lots of different presentations and activities and just group discussions on all things exercise, nutrition, sleep habit formation, healthy lifestyle goal setting. We have warriors set an exercise goal and a nutrition goal that they want to work on for the 3 months following the expo. Usually, once we've covered, everyone might join kind of thinking like, I just want to get healthier. I just want to feel better. Right. And then it's like, all right, from an exercise perspective and from a nutrition perspective, what's going to ultimately support that maybe umbrella goal, right? And then once we have an exercise dynamic and nutrition dynamic, then we can actually start to put like numbers to it and a timeline to it. We can take the vagueness of like feeling better or being healthier and pinpoint, what does that mean and what does that look like to you? What does it look like throughout a week for you? So really helping warriors apply what they're learning to their lives and what's practical for actually achieving that ultimate goal of being healthier. During those 3 months after the expo, warriors will have check-in calls with the coach, every 2 to 3 weeks or so, seeing how progress is coming along in their goals, providing more guidance and resources along the way, and also helping to make adjustments or kind of pivot the goal if needed. Because sometimes goals can be a little too hard. Might need to like scale it back, and especially if there's other extenuating circumstances or responsibilities in a warrior's life that just makes getting after their goals in the way that they would love to, but maybe can't just yet, makes it not really feasible right now. Sometimes they're a little too easy, and hey, let's up the ante. We can certainly do more, Let's make the most of the opportunity we have in this program. So that's really kind of that's like I said, our flagship service. Some of the other things that we offer are just kind of like single day in-person events, usually exercise, some type of activity related, even like cooking classes or something like that. Also, we have like online education webinars on niche health topics. So maybe something specifically on some coaches will do like meal prep demonstrations. Some coaches might do, hey, follow along with this exercise routine. Um, I've done ones on like ultimately kind of what's physiologically what happens when we become more flexible, and once we understand that, we can use that to help guide how are we going to approach becoming more flexible a little more effectively than just like you know feet together, touch your toes, and like force yourself in this uncomfortable position and probably count to 30 seconds in like 15 real seconds because you're just like feels terrible and trying to get through it. And then like you thank God once the awful experience is over. And then you never get more flexible. That was my experience for, 3 decades basically, until I actually figured out how to like relax into a stretch and what are things that can help you do that. And then you suddenly enjoy the stretch. You enjoy the process so much more. So a big thing we focus on is like, I think that obviously, like I said, I don't have a military background, but working with a ton of veterans so far, it's pretty clear that like the military can certainly drill in people. It's like exercise has to be this. You have to approach it this way, or physical activity has to be like of this intensity, or else it's not even worth doing, or something like that. And for a lot of warriors, especially if they got a lot of aches and pains by the time they're out of the military, training like that, being that maverick that they once were, probably isn't in the cards right now. And so, and a lot of their minds would kind of be like, well, if I can't do that, I don't even care to do anything, right? There could be a ton of other perfectly legitimate and valid like psychological factors that go into that, right? But a big part of what we try to focus on is, hey, good news. That's not really true. You can just go from doing no physical activity a week to doing 1 hour, and the impact that has on your health, especially over decades, is immense, right? So, like the benefit to your health going from like no hours per week to let's just say even 3, and that could just say like be casual walking, right? If we're doing it for like truly sedentary, doing nothing, to like 3 hours of walking sprinkled throughout the week, that benefit over especially in accumulated decades is like borderline cannot be overstated. That is literally adding years to your life. The difference from let's say going from like 10 hours to 20 hours is only like so much incrementally more beneficial than the 10 hours originally was, right? So it's like that first 3 hours is really like and again, warriors are coming up from all different angles. If we have like 20 or so coming to an expo, we got some warriors who are freaking beasts, right? But they're few and far between at this point. We got plenty who have so many aches and pains who are just like, dude, I just want to feel better. I need to change something too, because it's like the interplay between physical activity, physical health, and mental health cannot be overstated. I'd say the inverse relationship or dynamic of mental health on like physical health, and are you actually willing to engage in physical activity or something that is physically challenging, is huge. And so I know I've been rambling for a bit here, but those are basically a lot of the things that we try to focus on and implement into our programs, and our services. And then another big thing that we have, because we realize like not all warriors are maybe in the, want to travel to an in-person event, right? Some can, for any number of reasons. And so we also have like month-long wellness series, which are just a month-long cohort where you meet virtually each week for a specific niche topic throughout that whole month. So we have some that are focusing on like chronic pain and inflammation, diabetes management, women's health and hormones. We just started a men's health wellness series, and a sleep formation and training wellness series, because we know that's a huge issue for many of our warriors. So we try to provide all these different services to ultimately improve physical health. Hopefully that has a wonderful domino effect on mental health, spiritual health, down the line for warriors.
They just packed a lot in there.
Yeah, he did. And I had a question kind of queued up in my mind, and you touched on it, so I just want to expand on it because you touched on it right at the end there. So, you know, the layers, right? Like some people, I'm assuming, come to you just like, hey, I just need to lose a few pounds. And in your mind, you're like, yeah, but you also need to get better sleep. We need to talk about these medications you're on. We need to talk about your PTSD. Like, how do you broach those topics when somebody thinks they just need to, lose 20 pounds?
Sure, man, dude. Great question. One thing we are big at Winter Warrior Project is referring warriors to other programs. That's internally kind of the name of the game is how do we help direct warriors to whatever program is going to help them most. And so, I know maybe you guys have spoken with some of our Project Odyssey teammates, maybe your Talk teammates, maybe, Fita from Warrior Care Network. Those are all primarily on like the mental health side of the organization. And they're phenomenal programs. I can't speak highly enough of them. Warriors can't speak highly enough of them. And so, if there is something that is certainly beyond like our scope to address as physical health and wellness coaches, we will direct them towards these other programs and specialists who that's their jam and that's kind of what they rock at. Um, but at the same time, like we, at this current expo that I'm helping out with, yesterday when we went through and just everyone went around and introduced themselves, uh, it was unlike any expo I've been to yet. Every warrior dove into kind of their story a little bit. And some warriors shared, past struggles with like suicidal ideation. And this is like 10 minutes into us all kind of meeting and stuff. A lot of expos, warriors might share that on the final day, right? Because at the end, it's not these specific expos aren't uniquely mental health tailored and focused, but obviously that's going to the overplay is going to be huge, and so we provide the opportunities for warriors to share what they would like, and it's a beautiful thing when they do because that's when other warriors like tune in and then they kind of open up and share, and that's when they connect, and ultimately that's what it's all about is getting that camaraderie and that connection and that shared sense of purpose and experience, and that's where we encourage warriors to form battle buddies and like actually keep in touch throughout the coaching program. Lots will stay in touch after the coaching program and keep encouraging each other on their physical health goals. And so at the same time, it like I said, no military experience, but working with a lot of veterans and learning from them and asking about their experience, it's like leaving the military really turned like it makes sense and kind of seems like like the perfect storm for a lot of physical health issues once you leave. Once a lot leave, I should say. Because depending on the warrior's experience, let's say maybe someone enlisted right out of high school and they have spent most of their adult life in the military so far. So maybe for a large portion of that, most of their meals were given to them, right? They maybe never got a ton of hands-on cooking experience on their own. And also during that time, their physical activity was scheduled for them. And it's not even a question of if they're going to do it. It's everyone's doing this. And because we have to be physically fit, we got to be able to do the mission and do the job here. So they have like nutrition basically taken care of. They have exercise essentially taken care of for them. Obviously, they have at minimum some sense of connection and purpose and contribution to a higher calling, right? And then you just suddenly take that away. For a lot of veterans, it's maybe they were forced out and had to leave the military not on their own terms, which creates its own psychological impact and let's say troubles to address. Now they don't have now they're fully responsible for their own food, which it's a lot easier to just kind of grab Burger King every day than it is to now finally learn how to cook my own meals, especially if it's like, hey, I genuinely don't even like cooking, right? And it's way easier to just kind of get food like this that might have a lot of caloric baggage in it that they're not realizing is going to make their ultimate health goals a lot harder to achieve. And then on top of that, it's like I don't have to exercise anymore, right? It's not scheduled for me, right? It's not really expected of me. I don't have someone telling me what to do all the time. I can just kind of take it easy. So it's not uncommon for warriors to, when we're on a call with them, it's like, what about this program interests you most? And they're like, man, I got out like 2 years ago and I've gained 60 pounds since then. I don't even really know how or realized it was happening, and I need to make a change, right? And it's because they usually go from a very active lifestyle to potentially a very sedentary lifestyle. They go from controlled portions and their food generally on the, let's say, healthier end of the spectrum and taking care of them, to now they're fully responsible for it. And it's way easier in that setting to just kind of default to the simple, easy food, easy, cheap, probably not the most nutritionally robust food available. Um, and then on top of that, maybe they've kind of lost this sense of connection and purpose to a higher calling. And so the mental health impact that has is cannot be overstated. And so what's beautiful is like when warriors come to these expos and they kind of finally, especially if it's, there are some warriors a few years ago that, like, we're talking like 2024, where they're like, this is the first thing I've done since COVID. Like, this is my first time meaningfully out of the house since then. And I thought about like dropping out yesterday, not coming at all. But I'm so glad I'm here because they're around other veterans. They settle in. It's like when when warriors first get here and they're like understandably a little anxious because they might not know what they're getting into or something like that. Like warriors who have been to other Wounded Warrior Project events are usually pretty like settle in just fine and real quick and help set the tone for others. But many where it's their first event, they're like, I don't know what this is going to be. Halfway through everyone introducing themselves, you can just feel everyone, like, all the anxiety just leaves. And they find that they feel comfortable, they feel good opening up, they feel good sharing. And that's where it's like, it's in those types of moments where you yes, you're always kind of a little vulnerable, but like you are actually opening yourself up in a way that's going to allow other people to speak to what you might need and also help you actually be receptive to hearing that, whether it is on a mental health focus, a spiritual health focus, in my case primarily a physical health focus. It's wonderful. And so we really do try to focus on helping everyone understand, like, yeah, no, you belong here, everyone here belongs here. And we're gonna push ourselves, we're gonna challenge ourselves in a safe environment. And so even if it's going to be a little uncomfortable at times, that's what it's about. And that's ultimately how you push through your comfort zone, right? That's how we become more tolerant. Like tolerance is becoming comfortable with what's uncomfortable. Right. And so that's what we try to help warriors like really embrace. And also thinking like what makes sense for them as far as a goal goes. Cause it's like they might have, again, depending on their experience in the military, where it's like, all right, well, when I was in the military, I did all this. And so like I want my exercise goal to be, strength training this many times a week, rucking this many times a week, whatever it might be. And it's like, dude, if you can do that, awesome. More power to you. For the rest of us mere mortals, probably not going to be the easiest thing to make happen, right? And so we're going to have maybe, let's say, what are some realistic minimums for a number of times per week we can train, and some realistic maximums, and kind of work within that. And so yeah, there can be a little bit of trial and error as far as like what is a realistic exercise goal for someone, what is a realistic nutrition goal. We cover like reading nutrition labels so everyone feels comfortable doing that, and especially if you're choosing between two similar products, you can kind of see like, all right, which of these two, based on the nutrition labels, is more conducive towards my physical health goals overall, and kind of go with that option. Um, yeah, man. I guess what you got from there. I know I've been going for a bit, but I know that's a lot. But and I guess I know your question is more so like when it comes to like the PTSD stuff and the mental health stuff. Like we've kind of like I've been really trying to work that into a lot of the programming I cover because like so like a really big like I mean I would just say topic in healthcare right now that plenty of warriors are asking more and more questions about are like GLP-1 receptor agonist medications. And because I mean especially if it's like shoot I gained 60 pounds over the past year, uh that seems like a pretty and people are losing 60 pounds in a couple months on these things. That seems like literally a quick fix to this problem. So like it makes a lot of sense why people in general and especially a lot of warriors are interested in these types of medications. um there's a great book called Magic Pill, written by Johan Hari, where the author shares his experience taking Ozempic. And it's a great book because it's written in the sense of like not like a you should or shouldn't take these. It's just like, hey, if anyone's interested in like learning more about these, here's some very relevant information. And so one of the like little factoids that caught my attention in that book was like he talks about bariatric surgery, so kind of the predecessor to like more invasive approaches to weight loss within a medical setting, and how there's some data that out there that individuals who undergo bariatric surgeries can even have as much as like a 400% increase in suicidal ideation.
Wow.
Yeah, right. And so now there's plenty of other data that is, let's say, to a much lesser degree, but still in like a statistically significant increase in suicidal ideation. And so it's like, then I started looking into, is there any kind of data on these GLP-1 receptor agonist medications in suicidal ideation? And sure enough, there's some data out there that shows that people who take them might have an increased risk of suicidal ideation. There's other data that shows no real impact. And then there's even some other data that shows maybe a positive impact as in less suicidal ideation. So it's kind of one of these things where it's like, all right, well, what the heck is going on here? And when you think about how bariatric surgeries and GLP-1 receptor agonists, so again, Ozempic, Rybelsus, Wegovy, things like that, act on the body, they have very different direct physiological impacts on the body, but they have the same kind of indirect downstream impact on our relationship with food. And so my suspicion is that like individuals who are at an increased risk of suicidal ideation from bariatric surgeries or GLP-1 receptor agonists are probably individuals who've been using food as a coping mechanism for unprocessed trauma that they've experienced. Right. And so in those for those individuals, if they are not made aware that that could be a potential increase, and then they start these medications, and then all of a sudden their PTSD and all these horrific experiences start coming back, and these negative emotions associated with them are brought into like the forefront of their attention, and they can't act, and they now have no appetite and therefore can't distract themselves with food anymore. I think it's in those moments that they're going to be disproportionately more likely to have an increased risk of suicidal ideation. And so it's like kind of, I know that's a lot to unpack and discuss, but like it's stuff like that where it's like, because of, I think, this potential increased risk for individuals, and let's say compound that on the increased risk of suicidal ideation for veterans overall, let's actually highly encourage any veteran who's considering taking these to get some targeted mental health screening first, so that we're not putting them at putting them in a situation that they don't even expect. They're just like, hey, I just want to lose weight, not realizing that maybe a big reason why they gain weight in the first place is because they've used food as a coping mechanism, because food changes how we feel, right? Food changes ultimately our mental state. And so we want to make sure that we're not removing an established coping mechanism from someone and just leaving them with nothing, saying good luck sitting in these horrific emotions and figuring that out on your own. It's like, let's get them whatever focused mental health treatment they need ahead of time, so that, and then after that, if using these medications is something that's in the cards, at least they're not going to be put at an undue risk.
Yeah. And I remember when I quit drinking a few years ago, it was like the same thing, right? I was masking a lot of trauma and PTSD and emotions with alcohol. And suddenly, like when I cut that out of my life, I suddenly had to start feeling feelings again. It was rough
Yeah,
for a
man.
while. And thank God I was seeking, other forms of treatment to help me through all those emotions and everything. My God, Joey, this has been such a wealth of incredible
Well,
knowledge.
we're going to have to bring him back on. In fact, I'm thinking he needs to go on the scoop and talk with
Yeah,
Kingsley
we
about all
definitely,
this.
yeah.
Give him a full
This
hour
is
to rock
all,
and roll.
yeah. I was gonna say, because unfortunately we're over time. But that's not your
My
fault. Everything you
apologies,
threw
guys.
out there was absolutely perfect, right? So we do have to wrap this up, but I got one more question. And previous episodes with the WWP folks, I've asked like, how can they get in touch with you? Because that's usually what we ask our folks, but they've all given me the same answer. Call the number, and we'll get you what you need, kind of thing. So I'm not even going to ask you that question. But I am going to ask you a question, because Deshaun was military intelligence, and I use the word intelligence very loosely here. And so in terms that he can understand, what would be one simple thing every veteran out there can do right now to change their lives for the better, if you could give them just one thing to do?
I think, and obviously this is not limited to veterans, but working with a lot of veterans, I think it's something that they do need to focus on, especially once they leave the military. What is your why now? What is your purpose? I think that, personally, I believe everyone has a higher purpose because of a higher being that designed them and loved them and created them. And so whether your approach is that, or ultimately at the end of the day, if our purpose, I think, lies in stuff, maybe, we could say like outside our control, or what we used to be, that's going to be, of course, a recipe for immense mental health struggles now. And so one thing we focus on with Warriors here when it comes to like, setting these challenging exercise and nutrition goals, before we do that, we ask them, hey, what's your why? Why do you want to do any of this? Why do you want to do anything that's going to be challenging and require time and effort and energy on your part to make it happen? Is it because you want to, do you want to lose weight because you want to like take the pain out of your knees and back so that you can actually like walk more and enjoy exercise a little bit more? Do you want to be around longer to hold your grandkids up and lift them up and play with them, right? What is your purpose? Like, what is your why? And ultimately, when you understand those things and have good answers to those two questions, and you look at your challenging goals that you set for yourself, like through the lens of your why, it makes it that much easier and actually keeps you inspired to keep going. A lot of warriors might say like, oh man, like I just need a lot of motivation and that's why I want to be in this program. And which I think makes sense, right? But what we don't necessarily understand is like motivation follows action, right? We want inspiration to get started, right? But the motivation comes once we started doing things and helps keep that momentum rolling. And so asking yourself like, what is your why and your purpose in life at this point? I think are really good starting places that help put anything else you're going to work on in the proper perspective.
I absolutely love
He's-
that answer.
He's dropping knowledge the whole thing. Now he's just going to drop the mic. He's like,
Right? That PhD.
I'd have to replace
this
this computer if I did that, so I won't be dropping this mic.
No, yeah, absolutely love that answer, Joey. Thank you so much for coming on the show and yeah, just dropping all kinds of amazing insight and knowledge. And thank you for all that you do for the community. It really does mean a lot. Especially for someone who didn't necessarily serve, but you're supporting the community in such amazing ways. Can't thank you enough. So thank you. And on behalf of the entire VET S.O.S family, we want to thank everyone for spending their time with us today. It's always great having y'all along for the ride. Don't forget to check out all of our other episodes and keep coming back for more stories, insight, and support from the VET S.O.S crew. And if you enjoyed this episode, give us a follow, share the show, and tell a friend or two. Toss your battle buddies, fire team, shipmates, and wingmen that flotation device that they need in transition so that no one drowns in the sea of transition. And as always, remember to grab the VET S.O.S Lifeline.